The Chicago Bears just made a huge announcement. They've officially hired Ben Johnson as their new head coach. This is a big blow to the Las Vegas Raiders, and it's honestly tough news for their fans. In my opinion, Ben Johnson was the standout coach in this hiring cycle, and I truly believe he's on track to become one of the next great head coaches in the NFL. He was the top choice for many of us, so seeing him go to Chicago instead of Las Vegas stings. The Raiders now find themselves in a difficult position, as Ben Johnson could have been the person to turn their program around and lead them to success. With him off the table, the team will need to pivot and consider other head coaching candidates. Toward the end of this video, we'll dive into who might be the next potential head coach for the Raiders. But first, let's break down what this means for the team. Over the past week, there had been a lot of buzz from insiders and media sources about Ben Johnson possibly favoring the Raiders. Reports mentioned that he had interviewed with them, which was a step he hadn't taken with other teams before. There were even hints that he might be leaning toward Las Vegas for the role. Some of the biggest names in sports journalism, like Albert Breer and Adam Schefter, were sharing similar information. But as we now know, despite all the chatter, the Bears swooped in and secured Johnson. This leaves the Raiders in need of a new plan moving forward. Adam Schefter had a strong feeling that Ben Johnson wasn't fully committed to the Raiders, and it turns out he was right. Just 2 days after the Detroit Lions' tough loss to the Washington Commanders, Ben Johnson made the surprising decision to accept the head coaching job with the Chicago Bears. For me, this hire makes a lot of sense when you look at the Bears' situation. They have a promising young quarterback, a solid offensive line, and some weapons on offense. When you've got those key pieces in place, it's the perfect environment for a coach like Johnson to thrive. One of the most important things in the NFL is having a strong quarterback, and the Bears are in a good spot there. Their quarterback is entering his second year, and many are already calling him a potential generational talent. But even the best quarterbacks need a good offensive coordinator and play caller to reach their full potential. Just imagine if someone like Patrick Mahomes didn't have the right coach to guide him. He'd face struggles too. A great play caller is essential for any quarterback to succeed, and with Ben Johnson stepping in, the Bears are setting themselves up for success. Not only will he be the head coach, but he'll also take on the crucial role of play caller, which is a huge plus for the team. Looking at the Raiders' side of things, I thought they might have had an advantage if they could convince Ben Johnson by highlighting their strong defensive line. The Raiders do have a better defensive line than the Bears, with some promising young players already under contract. Still, the Bears have a solid defense too, with players like defensive tackle Devon Dexter and pass rusher Montez Sweat, guys who can make an impact. Even so, the opportunity to coach a rising star at quarterback in Chicago was clearly too appealing for Johnson to pass up. Another factor that could have played a role in Ben Johnson's decision to go to Chicago is the presence of rookie pass rusher Austin Booker. While not many people know who he is yet, Booker showed a lot of promise in his first year. He's a dynamic pass rusher, a lot like Max Crosby, with some really impressive moves. Booker came out of Kansas, I believe, as a fourth or fifth round pick, but regardless of where he was drafted, he's shown that he has the potential to make a big impact on the field. This type of talent, along with the rest of the Bears' defensive pieces, makes Chicago an attractive destination for a coach like Johnson. Looking at the bigger picture, the fact that the Raiders couldn't secure Ben Johnson is a bit surprising. The team had a chance, but ultimately, Johnson is headed to the Bears. One thing that had been rumored about the Raiders' chances was that for Johnson to come on board, there would likely need to be a change in the front office, particularly with general manager Tom Telesco. However, the firing of Telesco doesn't seem to make sense right now, especially when you take a step back and look at the history of the Raiders' management over the past 15 years. The team has gone through several general managers during that time, from Reggie McKenzie, who did a solid job but didn't have the best success with first-round picks, to the John Gruden and Mike Mayock era, followed by Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels, and then finally, Tom Telesco. Looking back, Telesco's first year actually turned out to be a surprisingly successful one. If you compare it to the Raiders' best draft in recent memory, the 2014 draft under Reggie McKenzie, Telesco's moves were impressive, and some would argue that his first-year performance was on par with the best of them. So firing Telesco at this point doesn't seem like the right move, especially considering his early success. But now Ben Johnson has made his choice and will be heading to Chicago. The Chicago Bears have a strong general manager in Ryan Poles, who has been with the team since 2021. He's been making all the right moves to rebuild the Bears roster, including securing their quarterback for the future in the 2024 NFL Draft. Under his leadership, the team has revamped itself and is looking pretty solid overall. What the Bears needed next was a coach who could put everything together, and Ben Johnson seems like the perfect fit. He's the right coach for the job, and his addition to Chicago is a great move for the team's future. On the other hand, the situation with the Raiders feels more uncertain. We were hearing from multiple insiders that hiring a new general manager to start fresh might be the right path forward. But now, looking at things, it's hard to understand why the Raiders would part ways with Tom Telesco. After all, Telesco had a really strong draft last year, and it's unclear if the team will be able to find another GM who can do as well as he did. If the Raiders end up bringing in another GM, the question is whether they'll find someone who can handle the position well. Looking at the past, there's reason to be concerned. For example, under the leadership of former GM Dave Ziegler, the Raiders struggled to evaluate talent, particularly on the defensive line. The team took players like Tyree Wilson instead of more highly regarded defensive tackles like Jalen Carter or Byron Young, guys who have proven themselves in the NFL. In fact, Young's college tape was not impressive, which is why it was no surprise when he didn't make it past his rookie season. It's frustrating to think about the missed opportunities, and hopefully, the Raiders will be able to figure things out moving forward, especially with the next GM they bring in. As the Raiders move forward, they'll need to focus on hiring a general manager who can truly evaluate talent and build the team up. It's crucial to find someone who has the right connections and insight, especially if there's a chance to move up in the draft or bring in a quarterback who could lead the team to success. But beyond that, the Raiders also need to start focusing on who their next head coach will be. One name that makes a lot of sense is Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cohen has been impressive over the past year, showing solid leadership and helping the Buccaneers' offense perform well. Some believe he's ready to take the next step and become a head coach in the NFL, which could be a great fit for the Raiders. Another potential candidate could be Cliff Kingsbury. Kingsbury has done an excellent job working with quarterbacks like Jalen Daniels, and it's a little wild to think that the Raiders almost hired him in the past. If the Raiders had brought in Kingsbury, things could have been very different this season. I'm convinced that if Kingsbury had been the Raiders' offensive coordinator, the team would have seen much more success. The right play caller can make a world of difference, and if the Raiders had him leading the offense, I believe they would have won more games and been much more competitive. That's the power of having a great play caller, something we all know from watching this team over the years. I've been pretty critical of Luke Getsy, and I stand by that. Before the season started, I said that Antonio Pierce's success would depend heavily on having the right offensive coordinator. Getsy, unfortunately, proved to be a poor fit, and as we saw, not only did the offense struggle, but Getsy was let go, and Pierce lost his job too. That really highlights how important it is to hire the right person for the job, especially when it comes to the coaching staff. As the Raiders look ahead, they've got some tough decisions to make. If they decide to go with someone like Liam Cohen or Cliff Kingsbury as head coach, they'll also need to find the right defensive coordinator to balance things out. However, it seems that the Raiders might actually be leaning toward a defensive-minded coach like Pete Carroll. Some insiders are suggesting that Carroll could be the team's number 2 option for head coach. If they go down that road, they'll need to make sure they hire an offensive coordinator who can work well with Carroll's defensive style. Shane Waldron, who worked under Pete Carroll for several years, could be a name to watch if the Raiders decide to go with Carroll. While Carroll's departure from Seattle wasn't exactly a firing, it's clear that he's eager to get back into coaching. So there are definitely options on the table for the Raiders, but it's crucial that they make the right choice. Whether they go with a defensive or offensive-minded coach, the key will be hiring someone who has a proven track record of success on either side of the ball. Pete Carroll has proven himself as a successful head coach, which makes him a strong candidate for the Raiders. You know what you're getting with him. On the other hand, Liam Cohen has shown he's solid at calling plays, and Cliff Kingsbury, although his first head coaching stint didn't pan out, has always had strong offensive units. A good play caller on offense can make a huge difference, and if the Raiders can pair that with a solid defensive coordinator, they could be in a good position. Another name to consider is Kellen Moore, who's currently the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. Some people think Moore could end up taking the job with the Dallas Cowboys, but it's still up in the air. Regardless, the Raiders have several interesting options to look at. Mike McCarthy is another coach I'd consider. He's had success wherever he's been, even though he hasn't won a Super Bowl recently. With the Cowboys, McCarthy has faced challenges, but I believe he's a solid coach who knows how to manage an NFL offense. In my opinion, McCarthy got more out of Dak Prescott than Prescott deserved. He made him a better quarterback than he is. If Dak is making $20 million, he's good, but not at $60 million. So McCarthy could be a good fit for the Raiders, especially if they need someone to work with the quarterback position. That said, it's unfortunate that Ben Johnson is heading to the Chicago Bears. It's a tough blow for the Raiders, but the team now has to focus on moving forward. They need to figure out who their next head coach and general manager will be, and then start assembling the right staff. It's a bit confusing that Tom Telesco was fired, but Mark Davis has put his trust in Tom Brady, so we'll have to see how that turns out. I'll continue to voice my concerns about certain decisions, like the Telesco firing, until the right person is hired and proves themselves. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see how everything plays out. Let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.